says in Galatians to carry each other's burdens. And I thank you for helping us carry this burden. It's been a great extension of God's own love to us. And y'all better get ready, because Mom wanted all of us to share, and we're all a bunch of preachers and teachers, so just settle in. Dad's life verse was Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body is by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave his life for me. So that means that my father died a long time ago, and he died in his physical body on Tuesday, but he died a long time ago, and I've seen that effect in his life as I've witnessed how he's never resisted God's leading. He's always gone joyfully wherever God's led. And I've heard stories about, even going to Taiwan. I just was born there, so I kind of thought, that's just the place you live and are born. And then I read about how dangerous it was to go in 1960, and things were unstable there. But Mom and Dad didn't resist God's leading. They went. Dad heard about a group of 200 Christians that needed a church. And, got to build them a church. It didn't matter that that church was on Matsu Island, off the coast of Taiwan, and was bombed daily by mainland China. And when he went to go and meet the congregation and start to build his church, Mom said, "How will I know if you've made it?" He said, "You won't know until I get home, if I get home." And he didn't resist. He went where God led him. I remember going to China with him when I was in seminary, and he had some packages he was carrying with him. And he didn't talk much about it, and I said, "Mom, our Dad, what are those packages?" And he kind of dropped them in various post offices along the street, and not too close together because they had to be not raise any suspicion. And of course there were Bibles and tapes and things he was smuggling in under great risk. And so Dad was never afraid to go to dangerous places. He took us to Malaysia, and I just thought that was the place you go to, and I didn't realize that Mom said that across from where we lived there was like a kind of jungle, or it was jungle everywhere, but she talked about the wild cats that lived there. She didn't tell me till the other night it was the communists that went through with guns and would kidnap missionary children and shoot and kill. She didn't tell me about that till the other night. And so Dad was not, he never counted the costs. He just followed. I remember going in Malaysia to the longhouses, and he would take us. I don't know why, because I don't think we were too evangelistically minded. We kind of probably complained the whole way. All I remember were all the leeches we got as we went through the rubber plantation to these longhouses. And Dad, so tall there, and I just, so funny to see him so tall with the Dayak people, and how small in stature they were, and he just loved them, and was so pastoral to the Dayak people. God was doing the work in their whole tribe, and he never resisted where God led him. I remember hearing, and this helps me as a missionary myself, where it's sometimes easy to resist and say, "I don't know if I want to go there, I don't know." And so I've always had a dad that went wherever, and when he went to Burma, I just thought it's somewhere you go. And then Mom mentioned to me that she and Dad had heard that some Chinese Christians were going up to Burma, and Dad got in on this trip, and it was the first white man they'd seen in 30 years, since most of the missionaries had left in 1963. And the vital connection he made there with Transworld Radio, he happened to meet people that were ready to broadcast, but they didn't know how, and so Dad was the link that was able to broadcast the gospel into Burma. And so Dad never resisted. Although he was crucified with Christ and he lived for Christ, he was lots of fun too. And I love mysteries. I cannot look at an Agatha Christie book without thinking about my dad. I can't watch Columbo or any of those things, because he loved mysteries, and so I love mysteries. He loved words, and we loved words. He loved limericks, and we would always make up limericks at the end of trips. And I still make up crazy limericks for my kids. They don't know where it came from, but it came from Gimpah, because he loved wit, and he loved humor, and he loved to laugh. And I think that's what I've heard many people say, the smile and the easy laughter, and that only comes from a joyful, crucified heart. And I just thank him, I thank Jesus for what he's done in his heart, and thank you for Gimpah for all the modeling, the legacy he's given to me as not resisting anywhere that Jesus would lead us.
Well, if it hadn't been for our mother, we would never have known that Dad did any of that stuff. Because he never ever said he was anything special or did anything special or knew anybody special. You know? He just never... Well, he was just unconscious all the time of his greatness. I mean, he was selfless and always giving and always loving. And just served the Lord with utter humility. Never with any pride. I found a verse this week that I thought fit him so beautifully. Luke 8:15 says, "But the seed on good soil stands for those with a noble and good heart, who hear the word, retain it, and by perseverance produce a crop." And of course that crop refers to fruitfulness, and my father had a wonderfully fruitful life. But before I ever knew of any of his accomplishments, I knew about his good and noble heart. And my mom tells me that even when I was 5 years old, I was worried, sick, that I would never be able to find somebody as wonderful as Dad to marry. And so I was looking ahead already. And had this wonderful example of a man that I wanted to marry somebody like my daddy. Well, as I grew older, I heard stories about his childhood, and it had been difficult. His own father left when he was young and grew up without a dad. His mom was often working and away and busy. And I just wondered at the miracle of his sterling character. Think of all the trouble he could have gotten in. But Jesus kept him. And Jesus kept him for the woman with the highest standards on the planet, Beth Callis. You know, kept him clean and hungry for Jesus. And I just love that so much. And then I spent time thinking about my dad and the richness of his life. It was very hard to separate him from my mom, because they were one in heart, one in ministry, and they did so much more together than they ever could have done separately. So it's been very precious to reminisce about my dad, and I will remember him for his love of Jesus, his utter devotion to my mother, his eloquent preaching, and his gracious spirit. One of the stories that we've passed around my family forever was the story about my dad being so gracious to everybody that when we would go to a restaurant in Taiwan where they knew us, the waiters would knock each other down to get to our table first because they wanted to serve my dad. They loved my dad because he loved them. And it's just a precious legacy. C.S. Lewis once said that true holiness is irresistible. And my dad's life of complete selflessness and love of God and love of others attracted people to him, and we will miss him very much.